Good Friday evening to you. I hope your weekend is off to a great start. Thanks for joining us on More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. We'll be joined by Doug Lesmerises, cleveland.com columnist, talking Browns and talking Indians, and a lot of good stuff to get to. The Browns schedule was released, and only a couple of primetime games on it, a Thursday night game, a Monday night game, and only one Sunday night game in the 4 o'clock late time slot. So not as high profile of a national presence as they had before. Let's take a look at the games as they line up. The Browns start on the road against the Ravens in week 1. Then they come back on short rest. Just 4 days later, they'll host the Bengals on Thursday, a home opener. So interesting thing there, Joe Burrow, only 4 days to prepare for that second game. Not much game planning going on there. Then you get the Redskins and Cowboys, some of the NFC teams in weeks 3 and 4. You flip over and you see the Colts in that 425 window. Then Steelers and Bengals back-to-back on the road. They host the Las Vegas Raiders in week 8. That's going to be tough to say. We move on to week 9, and the Browns have the bye in week 9. Then in week 10, they come back hosting a couple games at home as they have the Texans and the Eagles at home. So those 3 weeks, if you include the bye, where they're home, chance to get healthy, no travel. Then they go on the road the weekend of Thanksgiving to face the Jaguars. They'll be in Tennessee playing the Titans in week 13. And then they come back and they finish it out reasonably with some winnable games. Monday night, a tough one. They host the Ravens in week 14. Back-to-back weeks in New York against the Giants and the Jets. And then they host the Steelers to wrap up the season at the stadium on January 3rd against Steelers. And who knows, maybe that'll be a playoff type thing. Time to welcome in Doug Lesmerises, cleveland.com columnist. Doug, as always, we appreciate the time. Last year you said 12 wins. You're half right. So I know I said 10, 11, so I was right there with you. You forgot, huh? You forgot. What are you thinking? You see that? What jumps to mind?
So I think one of the things that matters for the Browns is when you look back on last year's schedule, as it turned out, when they started 2-5, 5 of those teams in the first 7 games they played went to the playoff. You know, we looked, for instance, you saw the Niners on the schedule a year ago. The Niners were the second worst team in the league the year before, and they turned out to be as good as they were, and they had a winnable game in the first month of the season at home against the Seahawks. Russell Wilson, leads a comeback. They dealt with Sean McVay, the little offensive genius, and the Rams lost. The first half of the season is more winnable. You looked at a year ago and you thought, man, if the Browns could have flipped a couple of these games. The Bengals were awful last year. The Browns didn't play them until the last month. So the Browns were already 5-7 before they got to play the Bengals. You see more winnable games early. They played both games against the Bengals in the first half of the season. They'll get Joe Burrow, as you said, on the short week. The Redskins in week 3, that's a winnable game. Vegas Raiders in there, winnable game. It just feels like a better opportunity sitting here now to get off to a decent start because the schedule did just work against them a little bit, and it put them behind the 8 ball, and the pressure built, and there were obviously other problems. But I think the thing you take away from this is, you could see that knowing the opponents they were going to have, it felt like they had a better shot with the schedule this year. But I do think the way it sets up, they have a better chance to get off to a good start and make those games in December matter.
How the opener against the Ravens in Baltimore, Browns are 8.5-point underdogs on it. They've already set the point spread. Caesars in Vegas has already set it. Browns 8.5-point underdogs. How important is it to at least not have what you had in week 1 a season ago against Tennessee, where it just kind of snowballed away from them? How important is that opener? I'm not saying that they have to win it, but they at least have to be competitive and feel good about the way they play.
So that's, they won that game last year at Baltimore as their best win last year. I mean, nobody beat Lamar, and the Browns went in and beat Lamar, kind of as he was becoming Lamar. I almost think it's a perfect excuse. Because say they do go on the road in week 1 and get their doors blown off Lamar Jackson throws for 4 touchdowns, runs for 2 more, and the Ravens beat them 49-10, right? You will be able to say, well, it's the Ravens. They were 14-2 last year. Lamar Jackson is awesome. We're new with Kevin Stefanski. We'll take a mulligan. I think it's almost perfect because I don't think you have to. It would be great, right? Go beat Baltimore on the road. Great. But if you don't, I don't think you're going to be dragging around going into Thursday because you're going to say, man, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are going to do that to a lot of people. Now, at some point, if the Browns want to be their best, they got to beat the Ravens. They're going to win the division at some point in their, and they already did it, but like they can't do that forever, right? Say we'll accept losses to Baltimore. But when you look at this schedule, I think it's very possible of the 16 games, a loss at Baltimore is the most reasonable loss. Right? So maybe on some ways it's tough to get that week 1, but in other ways, nobody is going to come out of week 1. They can lose by 60. And no one's going to say, well, season's over. Because you're going to say, man, Baltimore's good. So I almost think, no, it's not must win because it's a built-in excuse. And then you bounce back and you have a very good shot against the Bengals and Redskins the next 2 weeks to get your feet under you and show really what kind of team you can be.
Is there any part of that schedule that you say, boy, this is the critical portion of it as you look at it? Is there an area where you say, they really need to have it together by this point in time? The other thing is they get Joe Burrow twice in the first, I think it's 7 weeks. So you got a guy that's still trying to get his NFL feet wet, and you get him early.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know that there is a critical point. Everyone's going to point towards that game in week 6 at Pittsburgh, right? We knew that, you get Big Ben back, Myles Garrett back on the field against the Steelers after what happened last year. They did play the Steelers after the Myles Garrett situation, but not with Myles. So that's going to be big. But I think it's very weird. It doesn't set up to me like there's huge winning streaks in this schedule or there's huge losing streaks in this schedule, right? I mean, you think last year, for instance, again, the Browns had a stretch in their 4th through 7th games. They played the Ravens, the 49ers, the Seahawks, and the Patriots. Those teams wound up winning 14, 13, 11, and 12 games last year. The Browns played them 4 straight games. What are you supposed to do with that? That's really hard. Like, I don't see that here. And, like, the easy part, I mean, it's kind of nice to have the Giants and the Jets like that back-to-back. It's a little weird to play in New Jersey back-to-back weeks. But they're going to be in a situation where if they're competitive late into the year, there are some wins to take on the board. I just think it's a very balanced, doable schedule that doesn't have lots of must-wins or super tough things. It's like, you know what? If you kind of just go out and play pretty good football, I don't think the schedule is going to work for you or against you. And compared to sort of how it worked last year, I think the Browns would take that.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree. It isn't, when you look at this schedule based on what they had last year, you look at it and go, boy, they kind of caught a break. I mean, now nobody, as you pointed out, nobody knew the 49ers were going to be the team that they ended up being. And there's probably a team on their schedule who will outperform what everybody thinks they're going to do. But by and large, there isn't the thing where you're like, oh, we got to go here and play, other than the arguably the toughest games they're going to see are the ones in the AFC North, in their division.
Yeah, and again, I just think and Cincinnati will be probably better than 2-14, but again, it's still a young quarterback. Joe Burrow is not going to set the world on fire as a rookie. I mean, I think he's going to end up being a really good quarterback. But it's nice to get those Bengals games early when they still matter more, right? Because, again, you can balance it the other way. Okay, well, if you're in the playoff race, then maybe it's nice to have them late because they're sitting there. But, again, they sort of, when you looked at the Browns' schedule last year with Arizona and 2 Cincinnati games late, it's like, man, they looked like winnable games. But by the time they got to those games, they were already kind of a mess, and it almost didn't matter. So, I just think, it's like that Dallas game, week 4 is big, right? So it's like you have Dallas, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh in a row. But that's not the same as Baltimore, San Francisco, Seattle, New England. I mean, again, and you look at the quarterbacks, just guys like that Russell Wilson game just stands out to me so much last year. The Browns played well. It was right there. And then they got Russell Wilson, at home. And that's what Russell Wilson does. He does that to everybody. It was a killer game. And then you come back, you get a bye week, you come back after that, and you get Tom Brady on the road. There's just not combos like that. They got Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz back to back, but as good as Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz are, they're not Russell Wilson and Tom Brady.
Do you get a sense? Do you have an idea? What do you think? How many wins do you think is reasonable this year?
Yeah, I actually have not gone through and done that completely yet. But I think when you look at it, we all, many of us got out over our skis last year. Me more than anyone. But you can look at this schedule and see playoff. You just can't, because they still have the pieces, most of the good pieces, the important pieces they had last year. You can see why some of those pieces, led by Baker Mayfield, will be better, led by Odell Beckham, why that should be better. There's not a roadblock. This schedule will allow them to be as good as they actually are. Last year, and again, I don't want to devolve into how bad Freddie Kitchens' coaching was or where there were other problems. They were a better team than 6-10, right? They were more talented. There were some games right there, the red zone problems. But again, if they had caught a break or maybe not played a coach or quarterback quite that good in certain games, they might have squeaked out some of those. This schedule, I think, will show the Browns as who they really are. But, I think anywhere from 8, 9, 10, 11 wins, that absolutely could be who they really are, because we thought they would be that last year. And honestly, the talent, truly, it's not perfect, but it's there. So if I had to guess, not examining it, I think you can find 10 wins here quite reasonably.
Yeah, I would say somewhere between 8-8 and 11-5 is certainly reasonable. Doug Lesmerises, columnist from cleveland.com, will stay with us. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll take a look at some of the fifth-year options that have been picked up and not picked up for guys from the 2017 draft class, including Myles Garrett of the Cleveland Browns. More sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Doug Lesmerises and I talking more Browns football.
Presque Isle Downs and Casino has sports betting. Use one of our 50 state-of-the-art Bet America kiosks to place your bet and watch your favorite games on one of our many HD televisions, or visit our sportsbook area. Only at Presque Isle Downs and Casino.
Do you like Ohio State football? Would you like to get information from me, Doug Lesmerises, about Ohio State football without having to look at my face? We have got the plan for you. Become an Ohio State text subscriber through cleveland.com. You send a text, 614-350-3315. What do you get? 2, 3, 4 texts right in your phone every day about Ohio State football. Inside information, polls, voting, all kinds of things. You can be on our podcast. We take text subscriber questions on our Buckeye Talk podcast every week. If you really want to be involved with Ohio State football, in season or out of season, become an Ohio State text subscriber from cleveland.com. Send a text to 614-350-3315. 14-day free trial. What do you have to lose? $3.99 a month after that. 614-350-3315. I'll see you in your phone.
As a kid growing up, my dream was to go to college, play baseball, and get a degree. Coming out of high school, I had two choices. I was accepted into a 4-year university, but I decided to come to Tri-C after receiving a scholarship. I got my associate's degree at Tri-C. They transferred all my credits straight into Baldwin-Wallace, so I started at Baldwin-Wallace University as a junior. My name is Tyler Leonard, and I earned my first degree at Tri-C.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine. Welcome back to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue to talk Browns football, and recently the 2017 draft class had a number of their fifth-year options picked up. Remember, first-round picks in each of the drafts, under contract for 4 years. Then you have the ability to pick up a fifth-year option for first-rounders only. As we take a look at the 2017 draft class, Myles Garrett, Browns' first overall pick, had his fifth-year option picked up. 2, 3, 4, and 5. So Trubisky to Corey Davis all had their fifth-year options declined. The Jets picked up the fifth-year option on the safety Jamal Adams. Mike Williams, wide receiver, had his picked up. Now the guy that ends up being the steal of this top 10 is Christian McCaffrey. He gets a contract extension from the Panthers. They're building around him. Ross's has declined. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes, who won the Super Bowl, had his picked up. An added note, so the Browns had 2 other first-rounders. Jabril Peppers had his fifth-year option picked up by the Giants, and the Browns also picked up David Njoku's. Interestingly, the last Browns player that had a fifth-year option picked up was back in 2013, and it was Phil Taylor, the defensive lineman. That's how long ago the Browns had a first-round pick that they thought was worthy of getting a second contract. Let's welcome back in Doug Lesmerises. And Doug, when you look at the troubles the Browns have had identifying and drafting talent, it's kind of easy to see why they've struggled so much. It's pretty damning of the draft process that 2013 was the last first rounder who had a fifth-year option picked up.
And the guys in between, like most of them didn't even get to the point where a fifth-year option was a consideration. Justin Gilbert and Johnny Manziel gone each after 2 years. They weren't even in a fifth-year conversation. They were only here 2 years. Danny Shelton, 3 years here, traded. Cam Irving, Corey Coleman, each gone after 2 years. Like, it wasn't even like by the time you got to this day in previous years, it's like, oh, I wonder what the Browns are going to do. It's like they didn't even have a guy to consider. So, yeah, awful. And it does take a toll. Now, the other thing is, most of the time when we talk about the Browns in the draft, we're talking about things like this, about all the things they screwed up and other teams got right. That list of 2017, the full first round, 18 extensions picked up, 14 declined. And again, for instance, that number 12 spot that the Browns traded out of, a lot of people just think about the fact they could have taken Deshaun Watson there. Obviously, Deshaun Watson picked up by Houston, but the guy that Hugh Jackson that the Browns wanted at that spot instead, Malik Hooker, who wound up going a couple picks later to Indianapolis, the Ohio State safety, he was declined. So again, there is a lot of opportunity to screw this up. The Browns have just embraced those screw-up opportunities more than most teams. But if you think that everybody else always gets it right, no, that's not true. Just that the Browns have been awful at it, but now you start thinking about this, like you said, Peppers counts for the Browns because he was a first-round pick that went in the Odell trade. Without Jabril Peppers, Odell's not here. So they're 3 for 3 on that. Baker Mayfield and Denzel Ward will have theirs picked up next year. I believe in Baker. And you can just see it is changing a little bit. But when you want to know why there's a hole in the roster, it's because Gilbert, Manziel, Shelton, Irving, Coleman, basically 0 for 5 in terms of long-term building blocks out of the first round.
Yeah, and the first round, you got to get guys that are you got to get guys that are at least going to be there. Not most of those guys you're picking in spots where you're going to get Pro Bowls, but as we said, they're not there. So it just gives you an idea of what Andrew Berry is facing. There's some challenges. Now, he does have the cap space and all that, but you got to construct things. I mean, if those are your frontline guys, imagine what below that looks like.
It's like, and I love roster building, right? I love cap space conversations. You know why the Browns have a ton of cap space? Because they don't have any good players worth signing. It's like, well, they'd have a lot less cap space if they were paying Justin Gilbert a boatload of money because he was a 5-year Pro Bowler. Like, that's how cap. It's like, how do we get the Justin Gilbert stunk? There's no way you have no one to spend money on. But right? You have to stack. So that's the whole point of this, right? That they sort of messed up by accident. So then they reassessed, pulled back, said we're going to tank, and they tanked, no doubt about it. And now you start stacking them. But that's the whole point. It's not about one guy. It's not about Myles Garrett. It's about Myles Garrett and David Njoku and Baker Mayfield and Denzel Ward and Jedrick. That's what good teams do. You don't have to go 100%, but you can't go, 0 for 5 in 4 drafts like the Browns did earlier. So it blows a hole in the middle of your roster. And the other thing is, too, you have to be smart about how you go about it. Joe Schobert's not here because he was a pick. He was so good. He's not a first rounder. But they didn't negotiate with him last year while he was on the roster. Andrew Berry said going forward, they'll do that with guys like Joe Schobert. He was so good they couldn't afford it. So that's the different thing. You're not going to be able to keep everybody, but you would much rather be in a spot where you have so many good players. You have to let a guy like Joe Schobert walk because he's too good and too expensive, rather than saying we have no one to spend money on.
Do you think we're not talking enough about the I really like, the more I think about it, I really liked what Andrew Berry did in free agency. There were some guys that he spent big money on. Then he went with younger guys, like the Carl Josephs and Kevin Johnsons, who were first-round picks that are now, somebody gave up on them. They have talent. You put them in this system, 1-year deals, let's see what you can do. There's a method to what he is doing, being Andrew Berry, building this roster. And if you look close enough, you can see what he is doing.
And that's the thing, GMs, boy, and having connection between all your front office, your coach, and your GM, it's so important because really, truly, if you're good long-term, you turn over the whole roster constantly. I mean, again, when you look at like Russell Wilson's tenure in Seattle, it's basically Russell Wilson on offense and Bobby Wagner on defense, and everybody else has changed. So you've constantly, the way the cap works, the way good players price themselves out, you have to replenish yourself constantly. So it's like the Browns have been in such a hole. They're trying to drag themselves back like a normal mid-tier quality NFL roster. But once you get there, you can't sit back because you've got to replenish. So it's great to think about Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, a lot of these kind of big money, talented guys. But honestly, long term, if the Browns do manage to win and they want to keep winning, they can't keep all those guys. You'll pick maybe Baker and Myles, and the rest are going to cycle through. So you need to have a GM, and to your point about Andrew Berry, who can pick and choose, pluck in the draft, find the next crop of young guys that can develop for 5 years while they're pretty cheap. You pluck veterans here and there to fill need. You use free agency for need. You use the draft for talent, and you are constantly replenishing because as soon as you stop doing that, you're going to fall off a cliff. But right now, the Browns are building up, and then you hope you have a GM that can keep you here. And my gosh, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing to watch?
Hey, here's another thought. Is a function of this dysfunction the fact that you keep changing systems, you keep changing coaches, you keep changing GMs, so there is not a quote-unquote guy that fits our system because our system keeps changing. Is that where the Browns are at because of the constant turnover?
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, do they stink because of the turnover, or has there been turnover because the guys they hired stink, right? I mean, it's like, I'm not an advocate for like, well, this guy is terrible, but in the name of continuity, let's give him 6 years. If you're terrible at your job, you're terrible at your job. But yes, and this is, I think, more important than ever. They are more, I think, geared toward a system now than ever. And so this, if this one doesn't work, this is really going to hurt if you wind up with a quick hook, because you are really steering into a roster that's not just supposed to be a talented roster, but one that really fits an idea of how the coach wants to play. So if Kevin Stefanski is not here for like at least 3 or 4 years, I think it's going to be an even more difficult sort of reassessment teardown. But yeah, but it's more on the front end, right? I mean, they haven't been bad because they fired people. They've been forced to fire people because the people they hired were bad, So I mean, like Ray Farmer didn't deserve more time. It's like, oh, give Ray Farmer more shots at the no, that was not it. Hugh Jackson did not deserve more time. So you just got to hope Barry and Stefanski are the guys. And then if they show it, now, if there's growing pains, let them grow a little bit, right? You can't panic. But if they're not good, if they blow it, if Kevin Stefanski, I mean, again, I think we're a little bit down the path now of like everybody hated what happened with Freddie Kitchens. They thought he stunk. There's a lot of embracing of Kevin Stefanski like this. He's never been a head coach before, right? So we can't have a ton of assumptions about this guy. He seems smart, and I hope he gets his shot.
That's a fair assessment of it. Doug Lesmerises, we're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Doug will rejoin us, and we'll talk roster. How many of the guys that are projected to be the Browns' 22 starters do you think they've drafted? We'll have an answer on the other side of break. More sports and less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. We'll be right back. Doug Lesmerises will join us and talk some more Browns football. Stay with us.
Celebrate Naturestone's 30-year anniversary with a free Naturestone floor. During 2020, we will be giving away 30 free floors to 30 very lucky customers to say thank you for making Naturestone the best concrete flooring solution for garages, basements, and more. Call or visit Naturestone.com today to register to win, and we'll send you a copy of our new buyer's guide absolutely free. There's no purchase necessary. Winners will be chosen monthly. With over 30 million square feet installed for more than 60,000 customers, it's easy to see why I always say, it's not just a floor, wow, it's Naturestone.
There are tastes we remember. Every smell brings the happiness of times gone by. Experience this every time you walk into Gallucci's Italian Foods. Whether you need lunch on the go, a catered party, or that perfect blend of wine, meats, and cheeses, Gallucci's has exactly what you're looking for. Straight from Mama's Kitchen for old world traditions or original experiences. From the tastes you remember to new flavors you'll never forget. Gallucci's is a tasty branch of your family tree.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
More sports and less Levine. The Weekend Winners Edition continues here on cleveland.com. I'm Dave Bacon. Let's take a look at the Browns roster, the projected starters according to ESPN for the upcoming season. Now, highlighted are guys that the Browns drafted. And when you look at it, the wily veteran of this group is Joel Bitonio. He is going to be the oldest guy that the Browns have drafted that is projected as a starter. Janovich came in a trade. Beckham and Landry both in trades. Hooper free agent signing this year along with Conklin. You see Treader and Teller as well. Look over on the defense, and again, young guys are the only ones that are projected starters that have been drafted by the Browns. Garrett Nogunjobi, you got Wilson Takitaki, who, boy, that tells you your linebacking core is kind of thin if you're projecting him as a starter. And then the young cornerbacks, Ward and Greedy Williams. Let's welcome Doug Lesmerises, cleveland.com columnist, back in. And Doug, when you look at it again, it just reinforces what we had talked about last segment as far as the drafting goes. Really, the only guy who would be on a second contract that is a starter that the Browns have drafted is Joel Bitonio. And don't get me wrong, really good guard, but you would think it would be a little bit more than just one guy.
So, I mean, I think there are a couple things that come into play with homegrown guys, right? I do think there are times when we can all overvalue guys that you draft, right? Because at this point, like Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham right now are making the money that they're going to make. They've been in the league long enough. They've been productive enough that this would be their salary. Whether they were drafted by the Browns or whether they were drafted by someone else. You know, if Odell Beckham had been drafted by the Browns, well, then they'd be paying him what they're paying now, because if they didn't, he would have left as a free agent and gone somewhere else. So the thing that I think that really matters, there's a couple things. One is you get some guys in the locker room like Petonio who know what the franchise is like, and then when you have this turnover, you have a couple building blocks. So that really is important. But I do think there's this guy, when you can catch younger guys and have them cheap and have them be good winning players while they're still on their rookie deals. For instance, the Browns are paying Olivier Vernon $15 million this year. Like, is he worth that? I mean, I don't know that he's not worth it. That's a lot of money for what he is. If Carl Nassib was still here and being like a productive pass rushing defensive end for a much cheaper price at this point than Olivier Vernon, then maybe you could spend the Vernon money to get an even better set. You know, it's all about the roster building. So what you really, if Jedrick Wills, like in 2 years, is playing like a Pro Bowl tackle, and it's like, man, this guy's so good. If he was in the open market right now, he'd be worth $20 million. But he's on a rookie deal, and we're getting him for less than half that. That's how you really win, right? So the continuity in the second contract is nice, but I think the difference making really happens when you have high-level guys who are on their first deals making cheap money relatively while you're spending elsewhere. And the result is you have multiple guys who are playing like $15 million players, but some of them you don't have to pay $15 million. So in the end, once you get to your second contract and you're going to be expensive no matter what, yeah, it can be hard maybe to get free agents to come to Cleveland. But I think the big thing is those good young players who help you win before they hit it big on the money.
So Nick Chubb would be a perfect example of that right now. And Baker Mayfield, assuming he rebounds like you and I both think he will, would be another one. And when it's a quarterback on that rookie deal, you really have to make some hay because he's going to start eating up big-time money.
And that's the thing, because in the end, and you're exactly right. I mean, that's why this is a winning time, and we've all been saying that's why we all said 12-4 last year. Because you look at Baker Mayfield, when they play at their optimum level, right? Baker Mayfield, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Nick Chubb are all worth more than their current contracts. And so the point isn't, boy, look at this great 8-man core that's going to stay together for 8 years. Because if they're great, they're not going to be able to pay all of them, right? And then once Nick Chubb is out there, there's going to be a market for him. It's not going to matter who drafted him. It's going to matter, do the Browns want to pay that money to any top-tier running back? And I don't think Nick Chubb's going to give like a hometown discount to the Browns. He's just going to be worth a lot. And then the Browns in their roster building have to think about how that fits. But now is the time. And that's what's so foreign to us. When you go through a stretch of, oh, this is your winning time with Justin Gilbert, Johnny Manziel, Danny Shelton, Cam Irving, and Corey Coleman. There was no winning time there. But when you can build a little group of young guys, and then you have the money to supplement them with Sheldon Richardson, with Jack Conklin, with Olivier Vernon, that's how the magic happens. And it's weird. Like the magic, still, it's right now. The time for the magic to happen is right now because, again, you hope they hit on all these guys long-term in the draft, but when they get expensive, they're just not as valuable for your roster.
You know, the other thing that came out, Jedrick Wills, Joe Thomas said he could wear number 73. Kevin Stefanski said, whoa. I'm the coach. I get to assign the numbers. We're going to back off that. I think that was I liked what I heard, and I liked the rationale behind it. What was your take of that?
I think sometimes a lot of that stuff can be overblown. I don't think it's going to win the Browns a game or lose the Browns a game, depending on what number that Jedrick Wills wears. But if the point is, like, we're not talking, we're not leaning into it, we're just going to play, you know, and that is a message of, like, we're not playing the game of is Jedrick Wills the next Joe Thomas, then I appreciate where Kevin Stefanski is coming from. But, I do think in the end, that dude's got to block TJ Watt, no matter what number he's wearing, So, but I get it. And that Kevin Stefanski was, He's not sitting back. Now, if Odell Beckham wants to wear, I don't know, wants to change his number, I'd like to see Kevin Stefanski try to tell Odell Beckham what number to wear. But the rookie, tell the rookie what number to wear.
Yeah, I would agree. But again, it's a change of, it's like, don't worry about. I think that was his point. Don't worry about being the next Joe Thomas. Worry about being the left tackle that we need to block T.J. Watt. And here's another point. How important do you think it is that they've addressed the line? I mean, we've talked about that a number of times, and clearly they put a high emphasis on getting guys to block because they spent on the right tackle, who was the most expensive on the free agent market, and they used the 10th pick and got another tackle that was really highly rated.
Yeah, I mean, the question I asked, I wrote about, I talked about on podcast last year was, will this line kill them? They seem pretty good everywhere, but is the line at least going to be average? And the answer was no, the line killed them. They specifically their tackle, and also that right guard spot that Austin Corbett couldn't handle. So, yeah, and that's the thing, and I know, and you brought it up, Dave, when we were going through the roster, and people have brought this up a lot. Nobody is perfect 1 through 22 in your starters, right? So right now, if you're looking for a weak spot, it's like, where's the weak spot? Well, it's linebacker, because they're relying on some young guys that didn't spend any money there. I would much rather be weak at linebacker than offensive tackle. So they took Joe Schobert's money and gave it to Jack Conklin. And last year, they tried to patch it together with Greg Robinson, who in the end was a rejected draft bust that they thought they magically fixed, and it turns out, no, you didn't. And Chris Hubbard, a guy basically who is the sixth lineman. He's not really a starter. And they kept him as a swing guy now, which is great. But John Dorsey, he was a sixth lineman in Pittsburgh who had to play because of an injury, and John Dorsey gave him starter money. That is not addressing your tackles. First, 10th pick in the draft and the most expensive guy in the market, that's addressing your tackles. And the most important position to address are the ones that have the greatest effect on the game. They lost games last year because their tackles weren't very good. I do not really think they're going to lose games in 2020 because their linebackers are young, right? Because you can't be super strong 1 through 22. So it's about figuring out where you are willing to be the weakest, and I think they've just been smarter about addressing that area, because the big question last year was the line, and it killed them.
When you look at the roster, last year this team didn't really have an identity. Were they a running team? They didn't really get the ball to their big play wide receivers. Their defense was in. You can kind of at least see what they want to be. Now the question is, can they put that on the field? Do you get that sense, or am I giving them too much credit, being Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry?
No, I mean, I think you look at the statistics. Kevin Stefanski liked to use 2 tight ends in Minnesota. Baker Mayfield likes play action. Baker Mayfield is successful throwing to tight ends. So the idea that, every time they threw in the red zone to Demetrius Harris last year instead of Odell Beckham, and the answer was like, well, that was the route that was open, and it was like, okay, I don't know, maybe throw to your good players. So if you're spending money and draft picks on the things that match what your coach and quarterback like to do, that sure does make a lot of sense. But, again, it's great that Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski like to throw to the tight end. They better throw to Odell Beckham, right? I mean, the plan to get Odell Beckham involved last year was sporadic. I think there's blame to go everywhere on that, from Baker to Odell to Freddie Kitchens to Todd Monk and everybody, to the tackles not being able to block long enough to get Odell down the field. There's a lot of problems there. But again, I like the fact, great, Kevin Stefanski wants to use 12 personnel. Great. Throw to Austin Hooper. Also, get the arguably as good of a receiver as there is in the league, get him more involved at winning times and in winning situations.
Yeah, play matchups. The Browns had a number of guys that they could have matched up with, and, they didn't seem to match up with people a lot.
Well, and I will say, or don't play matchup. Just throw the ball to him no matter what. And I know it's the great balance of, you can't force it, whatever. There were just times when they weren't looking for him when he was open, and you can't I'll tell you what, I don't know. Michael Thomas in New Orleans goes against great corner. And sometimes maybe it's not the best matchup, but they throw to him anyway because he is awesome. You've got to get the ball to Odell at times that matter, in situations on the field where it matters. But if you're strong at tight end, if you can pass protect, if Baker's comfortable, if there's a flow to the play calling, all those things that we didn't see at times last year, then it's easier to say, you know what, we're going to Odell no matter what. But they do have to have that component of this. They can't fall in love with, let's put Njoku, Cooper, and the rookie on the field at the same time and go 3 tight ends and have Odell Beckham standing out there with his hands in his pockets.
Doug Lesmerises, cleveland.com columnist. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out, and we will shift gears. We're going to turn to the Indians. We'll be talking about the Indians. Some news coming out about Francisco Lindor. We'll touch on that. More sports and less Levine. Goes baseball when we return with Doug Lesmerises. Stay with us right here on cleveland.com.
As a kid growing up, my dream was to go to college, play baseball, and get a degree. Coming out of high school, I had 2 choices. I was accepted into a 4-year university, but I decided to come to Tri-C after receiving a scholarship. I got my associate's degree at Tri-C. They transferred all my credits straight into Baldwin-Wallace, so I started at Baldwin-Wallace University as a junior. My name is Tyler Leonard, and I earned my first degree at Tri-C.
Well, hello, everyone. Let me tell you a little bit about Brown's Football Insider. For only $3.99 a month, you can get text sent right to your phone each day from me, Dan Lobby, Scott Pasco, and Ellis Williams. In addition to that, you'll receive a Football Insider newsletter every day with special things from us, things that you won't see anywhere else on the site. You'll get breaking news, analysis, features, film breakdown, and things like that. Texting us directly gives you a great chance to cut through the clutter of Facebook, Twitter, other social media, and avoid the trolls. Also, it's the only way to get your questions on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. So why should you sign up? Try a 14-day free trial. You can cancel at any time. All it takes is one text, but you won't want to cancel. We have hundreds of subscribers join us over the last year. They love it and have stayed with us. We're seeing the Football Insider community grow every week. And it's only $3.99 a month, which is less than 14 cents a day. What I like most about Football Insider is the opportunity to connect with you one-on-one and really communicate with you. So how can you become a Football Insider? You can click on cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. Or easier yet, text me at 216-208-3965. Again, that's 216-208-3965.
It takes attention to detail. With your local Bryant dealer, you're getting more than just a technician. You're getting someone who pays attention to your needs and the little things that make a big difference. It takes a dealer you can rely on. And to keep your family warm this winter,
here, let me show you how this works.
It takes Bryant.
Bryant. Whatever it takes.
And to keep your family comfortable, it takes Smiley One Heating and Cooling. Find them at smiley1.com.
Welcome back to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. Talked a lot about Browns. We're going to shift gears to Major League Baseball and the Indians. Some plans beginning to take shape that could potentially start the baseball season in early July. Probably no fans, but potentially in home ballparks. Also, last couple of days, some word of Francisco Lindor. Sports Illustrated had reported that Lindor's camp had refused to negotiate any type of deal with the Indians that would extend that contract, that the Indians would love to try to talk about an extension, but have been unable to engage the Lindor camp. And early this morning on the Korean baseball telecasts, Buster Olney reporting that he's hearing more and more that if baseball gets going again in early July, one of the first people that could be on the move is Francisco Lindor of the Indians. Let's welcome back in Doug Lesmerises. Doug, that's an awful lot to digest and talk about. when you look at that, what do you think each and every week that goes by with Lindor, his value on the trade market probably goes down? Just thoughts about the Indians potentially trading him.
So I think two things. One is I sure hope there's no vilifying of Francisco Lindor through this in the end. Listen, that guy's a star, right? On the field, off the field, he has got everything you want in a franchise player and in the face of a franchise. And if he, in the end, wants to go do that in New York or LA or somewhere, Chicago, I don't know, bigger market, boatload of money, a team that can just pay him more than the Indians can reasonably pay him, and just provide him more opportunity to be a national sports figure maybe than he would get in Cleveland. I just hope people don't get too mad at him about that, because he's been a great Indian and he's a special guy. So I'm a little worried about, because there's going to be, I think, some stuff. Fans are going to be frustrated with the franchise. I don't know if the franchise then will try to make the point, well, this is what the player's doing. I think there's room here that there's no good solution. And so maybe in the end, we don't have to be mad at Lindor or the Indians. We just have to say this was sort of inevitable. The other thing is, and I am, sometimes I would rather a team push it to the edge and be willing to fall off a cliff and say we maximize everything we could in the moment. And so I understand, and I don't think that's how Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff are going to work. They're going to try to be smart. And as you said, if Lindor's value was going down, they want to try to get the best value in a trade. But man, if you really think you can still win a World Series while he's here with Jose Ramirez, with Shane Bieber, like they still have, with Mike Clevenger, man, they still have some really good pieces. I am not at all against saying we're going to milk every last game out of Francisco Lindor, knowing we have no chance of signing him. But there is value in getting every game in an Indians uniform out of him that we can, because that is our best chance to win a World Series. And the Indians can't be in the business of like turning up their nose at a chance to win a World Series. And there's no guarantee that what you get back is going to produce that World Series chance. So I get it. I hope it doesn't get too ugly. I imagine if they make a deal, it'll be pretty smart and people think there's good return. But man, I also would not mind seeing Francisco Lindor in a Cleveland uniform till the last possible inning that he could be here.
It's kind of interesting. It just speaks to how broke that system is. It's the only sport in America where you're not spending the same amount of money constructing your rosters. And I know it has to do with, the baseball money is more, it's local money. It's not national money with TV. There's all kinds of things like that. But it just goes to speak, the system's broke.
It is. And that's, that's where the fault could lie here. But, also, Francisco Lindor wasn't born in Akron. He doesn't have a natural loyalty. And it's not that he hasn't been a very loyal Indian, but man, maybe he just wants to go play somewhere else, which is why this system is set up this way, which is what Curt Flood fought for, right? I mean, that's why it works this way. This guy shouldn't have to be tied to one place if he wants to try to go somewhere else. So, and listen, the money, you look at the extensions, the big time contracts, guys like Lindor are signing. They're probably, honestly, as much as the Indians could try to give him a great deal now, really, there's just probably no way that they can give him the contract that some other, maybe not winning at the moment, but big money franchise is going to be willing to pay this guy. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. It's not a new story to Cleveland, but what I hope is that they don't jump too early. And I hope that in the end, everybody can appreciate what Francisco Lindor has been here and have good memories and good feelings about this, however it ends. Because it's not going to end with him being an Indian long term.
No, and the interesting thing is you mentioned those long-term deals. And this is going to be a problem for the Players Association and baseball, because you're getting the $300-400 million deals, But what you're not getting is, there's basically no second-tier guys that are getting $8, $10, $12, $15 million deals. You're getting them that are getting $2, $3, and $1 million. It's going to be very interesting when the next labor thing comes up in 2021. You could be looking at a work stoppage in baseball because the middle class is getting hammered in Major League Baseball.
And this is probably naive, but baseball players don't have to make $40 million a year. Just like college football coaches don't have to make $8 million a year. The world is shut down right now. Nobody knows how sports is going to make money going forward. Nobody knows how many fans are going to be in stadiums and arenas. I don't know. I mean, could this be a time for a reset? And I'm not trying to put more money in the pockets of owners, but I mean, maybe you lower hot dog prices and lower ticket prices and realize everybody in the game could make half as much as they do and still be very happy and very well compensated. I mean, it's bonkers, right? I mean, that's no great insight by me. I don't think it's going to happen, but there is a world. It doesn't have to be this way. It's not the natural law of things. That what are you going to do? Baseball players make $36 billion a year. It doesn't have to be that way. So I don't know. I hope it doesn't, it shouldn't take a pandemic for fiscal responsibility to come to major American professional sports, but maybe it will.
Well, and again, that goes to maybe that's why you don't trade Francisco Lindor. See how this plays out.
And the guys you're getting, right? I mean, maybe you get the next Francisco Lindor, right? And that's the hope, that you turn one Francisco Lindor. Well, then you get a guy who's 6 years younger. You have him, and then when he gets to free agency, you trade him for the next Francisco. But eventually that chain's going to be broken. There are worse things than stinking, right? And tanking in baseball is much more difficult than tanking in basketball or the NFL, where you have more ready-made guys come out, right? I mean, to get the first pick in the baseball draft is not nearly the same thing as in basketball and football. But you know what? With what the Indians have basically miraculously done in this era, and the fact that, that they got to extra innings in Game 7 of the World Series, but have been the dominant team in their division, have been a regular playoff contender, have been discussed every year as among the best teams in baseball. This is a fantastic, unbelievable stretch of success for a small to mid-market team. And if at the end of that they have to lose 100 games for a year or two, I don't think anybody, I don't think fans or ownership or anybody should throw up their arms and say that's completely unacceptable. When you're the Indians, man, you can't win forever. You can't win forever. And so, maybe you just push on this, hold on to Lindor, and accept the fact that when he goes, you're going to miss him. And you might lose for a year or two, but then you start the process again. You don't have to only restart that process through a trade.
Doug Lesmerises, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Doug Lesmerises, you can read them in the pages of the Plain Dealer. You can also read them in cleveland.com as well. That'll do it for us on this edition of More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. Want to remind you, Les will be back in the chair Monday night. Dan Lobby will be his guest right here on More Sports and Less Levine. We'll see you again next Friday right here on More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. Have a great weekend. Good night, everyone.